Great Expectations Literature Project. Presented by Group 5-8B. By the supervision of Mrs. Julie Victor. Chapter 1. "Oh, don't cut my throat, sir," I plead in terror. "Pray, don't do it, sir." Peb is pleasing the thief. Don't do anything to him. Also, atmosphere is scary and frightening. "Darn me if I couldn't eat him," said the man. The man wasn't educated. Chapter 2. "Where have you been, you young monkey?" Mrs. Joe is joking for the first time. "Monkey? Churchyard," repeated my sister. Mrs. Joe is embarrassed. Chapter 3. "Stop, thief, and get up, Mrs. Joe." Setting is frightening and threatening. Chapter 4. Addressing the guests with her best grace. This sentence shows that Mrs. Joe Gardry was doing her best to please the guest, as she insisted that they would taste her food. Chapter 5. Then the ends of the torches were flung hissing into the water, went out, as if it were all over with them. This sentence explores through how they were rescued, as the setting was filled with relieving feelings. Chapter 6. I mistrusted that if I did. This statement shows that the setting is leading into a mistrusting cycle. Yeah, was there ever such a boy as this? This quote reveals that they started trusting each other again, and the setting is leading into compliments. Chapter 7. A man would die tonight of lying out on the marches, showing that the weather was too cold. How awful it would be for a man to turn his face up to them. The marches were disgusting. No help or pity in all the glittering, the multitude. It wasn't safe out there. Large and dismal house shows that Miss Havisham is living in luxury. Barricaded against robbers, the house was safe. Chapter 8. In a strange place shows that Pip was worried. Miss Havisham's house, which was of old brick and dismal. The house was ancient. Whoever had this house could want anything else. This shows that the house was perfect and was wished by others. Passages were all dark. She had left a candle burning there. A house's atmosphere was weird. Chapter 9. That was a memorable day for me, for it made great changes in me. Pip was thankful for the day, as the setting has been terrific, and he had learned things and changed things in him. Chapter 10. The setting was mysterious. Moreover, Miss Havisham's was his dream, as Pip was burning with curiosity for dating Miss Havisham. Quote, "I coaxed myself to sleep by thinking of Miss Havisham." Chapter 11. The setting in the house was gloomy. As a result, Miss Havisham was holding a candle because she couldn't see him. Quote, "She took no notice of me until she had the candle in her hand." The setting in Miss Havisham's house was neglected. No one was caring for it. Quote, "I looked into a most miserable corner of neglected garden, upon rank of ruin of garbage stalks." The setting in the house was extremely dangerous. Because of the room which was filled of fire, which is more, Pip couldn't see anything except the 3 ladies and 1 man. Quote, "I could see nothing except the shining of the fire in the window glass. There were only 3 ladies in the room and 1 gentleman. Chapter 12. That thing in Miss Havisham's garden seemed to be spiritless. Quote, I explored the garden. The setting in Miss Havisham's house was old-fashioned and antiquated. Quote, I saw a garden chair, a light chair. Chapter 13. That thing at the door of the gate was habitually for Pip as Estella opened the gate for Joe and her. Quote, Estella opened the gate as usual. The setting in Miss Havisham's house was surprised, because she interrogated more than once, how could this elegant gentleman, the husband of the violent in-hearted woman? Quote, You are the husband of the sister of this boy. Chapter 13. The setting between Pip and Miss Havisham at the end when Pip and she were saying goodbye. Pip asked, would he come again? But Miss Havisham replied angrily that he would take the permission from Joe. Quote, Am I to come again, Miss Havisham? I asked. No, Gardry is your master now. Gardry, 1 word. Chapter 14. Pip wasn't satisfied with his home, and he expressed furiously that it is the most awful thing ever. The quote, It's the most miserable thing to feel ashamed of home. Pip always showed his vigorous dissatisfaction about Mrs. Joe. The quote, Home had never been a very pleasant place to me because of my sister. Pip realized at the supper time that this thing was homely than before, because of Miss Havisham and Stella were there, which increased the percentage of his dissatisfaction. The quote, When we went supper, the place and the meal would have never more homely look than ever, and I feel more ashamed of him than ever. Chapter 15. The quote, In my desire to be wiser, shows that after all what Pip has suffered, he is still willing to become something great in the future, and the setting is full of optimistic spirit. The quote, Hunger for information, reveals the setting which filled with willingness for Pip to know information about Mr. Wopsle. The quote, I wanted to make Joe less ignorant and common, shows that the setting is filled with sympathy, as Pip cares about Joe and wants him to have also a big role in the society. Chapter 15. The quote, It was pleasant and quiet, explores the setting of the sails on the river which is so quiet. Don't go on in that way. This quote shows that Pip doesn't want Joe to complete his bad track, and the setting is filled with caring spirit. The house seems to have been violently entered when Joe Gardry was out. This quote reveals Pip's feelings about Joe leaving them, and the setting filled with a sad spirit. Chapter 16. When she stood facing the fire, the quote shows that the thing setting was comfortable, as they were not cold. The quote, But my mind did not accuse him of having put in to the latest use. This shows that the setting was filled with trustworthy from Pip to Joe. Reopened and re-argued, shows that the setting was filled with misunderstanding between them. The quote, Her temper was greatly improved, shows that the setting proves that Mrs. Joe became back to her regular character. This played it to my sister with considerable confidence, shows that the setting was filled with Pip's strong character when he displayed the crutch he borrowed in the village to his sister. Chapter 17. I tried to decline. This statement shows that the setting was filled with hate to the costume that Pip annually dressed. It came off my lifting upon my own eyes from a task I was poring at, writing some passages from a book. This line explores that the setting was filled with willingness of Pip to die hard and write some passages from a book. That you have felt you could give me your confidence, Pip. This quote reveals the friendly spirit that is diffused in the setting between Biddy and Pip. She would have rather wounded her own breast than mine. This line shows how much Pip trusted and relies on Biddy, as the setting is full of sacrificing. Chapter 18. I became aware of a strange gentleman leaning over the back of the settle opposite me. This quote shows that the setting is dangerous. I'll ask you a question. This statement reveals that the setting was in an investigating mood. I heard my name mentioned, endearing tone by both of them more than once. This sentence shows that the setting is in wonder, as Pip was questioning himself. Why mentioning my name? Chapter 19. Morning made a considerable difference in my general prospect of life. The setting reveals that Pip's morning was filled with enthusiasm, as he felt a difference. I strolled alone, purposing to finish off the marches at once. This quote shows that the setting was rushing, as Pip hasn't finished the marches yet. I was not best dressed with Joe's being so mighty secure of me. This quote reveals the setting as it was a bit like harsh security system that Joe proceeded it on Pip. Chapter 19. This statement, Joe is a dear good fellow, shows that Pip restated that Joe has been a terrific friend of him, and the setting is filled with a great spirit. It was hurried breakfast with no taste in it. This line emphasizes the setting and reveals that, as Pip was hurried, he couldn't even taste his breakfast. We changed again, and yet again, and it was no too late and too far to go back, and I went on. This quote reveals that the setting was filled with a different feeling of Pip that he had transformed. The end. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed.